Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, member of the House Judiciary Committee. He also served as the lead House manager in Donald Trump's first impeachment trial. Congressman Schiff, thank you so much for being here. We are told, those of us on the outside of the House of Representatives, that there are these phantom Republican moderates who understand the gravity of what this impeachment inquiry represents and the tenuous position they have as Republicans from districts that Joe Biden won in 2020. And yet, they still voted for this. What do you make of the entire Republican conference supporting an impeachment inquiry?
Well, they're cowards. I think you can fairly say of the so-called moderate Republicans in the House, they're always there when you don't need them. But when there's actually something of consequence, they cave. They spent years, and particularly this year, investigating Joe Biden. They came up with nothing, and they admitted as much. So now they're going to have a formal impeachment inquiry so they can find even more of nothing. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what crimes they even want to suggest Joe Biden committed. All they do know is Donald Trump wants this. Donald Trump needs this. Donald Trump is going to make their life difficult if they don't give it to him. Those moderate Republicans don't want Donald Trump coming after them and ginning up a primary against them. And so they're going to do this to dilute the stain of his former impeachments, to gratify, their master in Mar-a-Lago. They also know they have no affirmative positive agenda for the country that even their own members can agree on. They're doing nothing on housing costs. They're doing nothing on health care. They're doing nothing on climate. They're doing nothing on guns. They can't agree among themselves on any policy. So what are we doing? What have we spent the year doing? Well, they censured me for leading Trump's impeachment. They vacated their own speaker's chair, and now they want to begin an impeachment proceeding against Joe Biden. This is how they're occupying the nation's time when there are serious challenges like funding Ukraine and Israel that we should be doing.
You make mention of the master down at Mar-a-Lago, and it seems pretty obvious that this is in service to the man they call Orange Jesus inside the Republican conference. And yet it sort of is a strange strategy, right? If the point is to humiliate Biden by impeaching him, to give him that scarlet letter, it only brings up the fact that Trump himself has been impeached twice. Like, how do you even begin to talk about this on the campaign trail without inevitably ending up back in the place you want to pretend doesn't exist, which is Trump got impeached twice?
Well, what they hope to do is muddy the waters. They hope to persuade people, Trump was impeached twice, but it was just politics. And now we're going to impeach Biden, and that's just politics. They're going to try to, whataboutism. They're going to try to establish some kind of false equivalence when there is no equivalence. Donald Trump was impeached for his own abuse of power, for his own commission of high crimes and misdemeanors, for withholding hundreds of millions in military aid for Ukraine while that nation was at a war to extort Zelensky into helping smear his opponent in the first impeachment, and for inciting a violent attack on the Capitol in the second impeachment. His actions, his misconduct, his abuse of power, his constitutional high crimes and misdemeanors. By contrast, they're proceeding with an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden based on Hunter Biden, based on Hunter Biden's conduct, which they have not been able to tie to the president. It couldn't be a more stark contrast, but they hope that if they throw up enough chaff, maybe they can confuse the public and essentially persuade people that what Donald Trump did, they should discount because everybody does it.
You mentioned Hunter Biden, and we played a little bit of sound from his remarks outside the Capitol this morning. I found it actually really effective and somewhat moving to hear someone who's been grappling with addiction sort of take ownership of his wrongdoing. And I wonder how, what your reaction to his comments, his remarks was, and also how important it is to hear from Hunter Biden in the middle of all of this.
I did think it was pretty powerful. It reminded me, too, of a voicemail I think the Republicans leaked some time ago of the president leaving a message for his son that he loved him, that he knew he was going through a hard time, that he was there for his son. And I remember, watching the Republicans push this out and thinking, why do they think that this is going to somehow engender support for the GOP among the public? I think the public is going to see a father concerned about his son. And there are enough people in the country that have had tragic experiences in their family with loved ones with substance abuse, addiction, attacking a father for being a father, I don't think is a good political strategy. But I do think part of it, Alex, is they know the president loves his son. And this is a way to hurt the president, not just politically, but to hurt him personally. And in that sense, the Republican conference in the Congress is just like Donald Trump. Donald Trump loves to hurt people in the way he thinks is most effective to wound them. It's a fundamentally indecent aspect of Trump's very malignant personality. And here you see Republicans emulating it.
Yeah, the cruelty is the point, which Adam Serwer coined at The Atlantic, and it stands true for the entire Republican conference in a moment like this. Congressman Schiff, given how organized the Democrats were, how much evidence they had before they began their impeachment inquiry, what are the implications for an impeachment inquiry that's going off to find the evidence, just in terms of the time frame we're operating under, the amount of cost to the American taxpayer, and what they actually come up with, which may not have anything to do with any of the things they are talking about at this moment?
I think the biggest costs to the American people are the opportunity costs. That is, while they occupy all the time and attention of the House with these impeachment proceedings and contempt proceedings and vacate the speaker proceedings and expulsion proceedings, they're not dealing with the nation's problems. We're about to break for the holidays, and there's a war going on in Ukraine. There's a war going on in the Middle East, and Congress is failing to act. And so the biggest cost is the opportunity cost. But I think they're also setting themselves up for a terrible end, because these things have a way of gaining momentum. Now that they've started this inquiry, Donald Trump is going to insist it come to a conclusion with an impeachment that they probably don't have the votes for. And so they're going to be in a position of either disappointing Trump, disappointing their MAGA, Fox viewing base, having set up all these expectations. They're going to either have to say, sorry, there was no there, or try to force a vote, force these vulnerable Republicans to vote, and potentially lose that vote. But it's frankly a loser for the country any way they take it.
A loser for the country from the second least productive Congress in modern American history. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for your time and wisdom tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.